We are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show. Hi, and welcome to another Evolve to Win show with Paul and Heather. I'm Paul.
I'm Heather, and we have with us today Dr. Gayle Carson. Welcome, Gayle.
Hey, Gayle.
Hi, welcome to you too.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, this is why you have to listen to this show. Dr. Carson is the queen of reinvention. And so her gift to the world is that she helps people to reinvent themselves when they're feeling less than excited about life or business. And so a little bit about Gayle, and I'm going to actually have her talk to you a little bit about her past career. She's reinvented herself many times, and she has a spectacular business career. She is currently advisor to CEOs, entrepreneurs, and she's created this philosophy called the SOB philosophy, Spunky Old Broad. And in fact, we are just a week outside of Dr. Carson's 80th birthday. So congratulations, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And I just love how much energy you still bring to this world. Someone who is avid about working out. I think you work out for like 2 hours a day. Is that right?
I do work out 2 hours a day, yes.
It's why I'm sure you have so much energy, right? But Gayle, first, can you tell us just a little bit about your background? I mean, you at one point had a company that you built up to 350 employees, right?
Which I never want to do again. I can tell you that.
Okay, so put that out there right away.
Good, because we have some questions about that.
Yeah, because I want to know a little bit more about that company that you created and how you built it as big as you did.
Well, it's interesting because I started out, I had one small modeling school. That's what I had. And I built it, I started with a second and a third, but eventually I formed a chain of career schools. We had court reporting, legal and medical secretarial, fashion merchandising, travel, real estate. So there were 7 schools altogether. And then I had a convention service company, which serviced the conventions that came to South Florida. So we did industrial shows, theme parties, spouse programs, tours. I mean, anything that the convention needed, we did. And then we had a talent agency that was SAG and AFTRA. So we did the movies and the TV commercials, as well as print and convention work and so forth. And of course, it took a lot of people to do that. And I did that for 21 years, never thought about doing anything else. How I built the company is interesting. I built it by speaking. I spoke everywhere. Before I went into paid speaking, I did 10,000 free speeches.
No way.
That's how I did it. And it was just very natural to me. And how I got into speaking was as part of the convention business. I booked several people who were, well, Bill, for example, who was the first president of NSA, Bill Gove, and then, of course, Sam Edwards, who was a CPAE as well. And they kept saying, Gayle, you're a better speaker than we are. You need to join NSA. Well, I said, I don't have time. I'm running this company. And finally, they convinced me. I went to NSA. I found out I could make a living as a speaker. I came home. I put my business up for sale and became a speaker. And that's basically,
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot after that, but that's basically what happened.
So, all right. So
Yeah,
for those who don't know, the NSA is the National Speakers Association. And so Gayle's describing her first real interaction with them. So it was the first conference that you went to where you recognized that you could be doing that for a living?
Yes, and it was a totally different time. It was 1980.
Wow.
So speaking was different. The business was different. And it took me 9 months. But I got on the phone. Now, you can't do this today because nobody answers their phone. But back in 1980, I got on the phone and I called 100 meeting planners a day. I called 500 a week. And it didn't matter who said no. It just mattered to me who said yes. And I was in 9 months, I was doing 135 programs a year. And that's what I did for 20 years. And I was very fortunate. I worked in 50 countries, 49 states. I had 1,000 clients in 50 different industries. But you can't do that today. It's a different world. It's a different atmosphere. And meeting planners really aren't the ones who are hiring speakers now. People think they are, but they are not. And so it's just a different world.
Hey,
Wow.
listen, listeners. This is a tip for, for most entrepreneurs out there, for most people in sales or whatever. One of your best strategies to set you apart from your competition is to get out and to speak about your particular industry or topic or whatever it is.
Mhm.
That sets you up as an industry expert, and that's what separates you from your competition.
It's so true. I mean, I didn't know how to do anything differently because I was one of the few people in college who was trained as a speaker. I had to do 17 public appearances a week in order to get out of school. And so my majors were English, theater, broadcasting. And so I was always in front of somebody and getting a grade for it. So it was either shape up or ship out. I mean, it was really that kind of thing. And to show you that it isn't easy, I had all D's my first semester, and I thought, well, not too smart. And so I called my grandmother, and those were the days of the reel-to-reel tape recorders. And I said, would you buy me a tape recorder, which she did. And I practiced 3 hours a night to be able to speak, because I was with the creme de la creme in that school. And therefore, and I graduated with straight A's, but it was a long trip from the D's to the A's. And so when I got out, I knew I could speak, and I thought, well, this is easy. And that's how I got started.
See, this is why we asked Dr. Gayle Carson to be on. It is, at that time, I mean, there weren't that many, women going to college. I mean, if they were homemakers, whatever. They weren't looking as far as
I'll never be a homemaker. Never was.
I know.
Never will be.
I know, and you've proven that. But I mean, at that time, was kind of the way that it was.
Well, and the professional speakers at that time, when
we're
you're
all
entering,
male. They're still all male.
When you're entering that industry, you and I have talked about this. The professional speaking industry in 1980, when you joined the National Speakers Association, how male dominated was that industry?
Oh, very. As a matter of fact, I was one of 19 people certified to teach Tom Peters' In Search of Excellence program. And when I would show up, they would, of course, be expecting Tom Peters, which was never going to happen. But
right.
I was in my navy blue suit with a little tie, and navy blue is not my color. And I would be on the stage, and I would put my feet down in a power pose, and I would say, good morning, I'm Dr. Gayle Carson. And I'm here to teach you about excellence. And if I didn't get them in that 5 seconds, I didn't have them the rest of the day. But that's what it took.
Well, one of the things that we've already heard from you, and I know we will continue to hear, is that you have an incredible amount of discipline and persistence. Those are your words, right? This is what you convey to the world. And I mean, look, who actually has the discipline and the persistence to call 100 anything in any given day? And you did that for months to build your business.
But I did that in my other business. I had a system where I would call prospective students, what I would call warm clients. And I got those from the leads I got from speaking, because I spoke in the school system a lot. Mm-hmm. So, and I was one of the only people they would let collect names and lists from the students that were in the class. And so I had a certain system that I would dial the phone, and wouldn't matter how many times I dialed, but I had to reach 10 people. When I reached 10 people, I would take a break. And so even on the weekends when I was, because I used to call on Saturdays was a good day to call, I would hit my 10, and then I would swim 20 laps. And then I would come back and get 10 more and swim another 20 laps. But I always had a system by which I didn't stop what I was doing till I reached 10 people.
Wow.
Gosh, okay. I want everybody to just take a pause and drink that in, because I mean, even though less and less people are answering the phone, to be fair, there are less and less people, less and less human beings calling these days, right? We get robocalls nonstop.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
It's very infrequent that you actually get a phone call from a human being who wants to build a relationship. So even though that strategy, people may think that that's gone by the wayside, when you've got a warm lead, right? And you pick up the phone and you make that call, just you picking up the phone and making that call makes a massive difference, right? Most people aren't doing it.
Well, it's true because most people have call reluctance. They don't want to get on the phone. They don't know what people are going to say. They don't know how they're going to be received. But it didn't matter to me because I like people. So I like to talk to people. I like to meet people. So I love to talk to people on the phone. So it was very natural for me to do that from the very beginning because I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So take us a little bit into this concept of reinvention. I mean, this is really what we want you to talk to our audience about. This concept of reinvention, how did you stumble upon this and choose this as an area of expertise?
Well, I don't know if I stumbled on it or it stumbled on me, because when I stop doing what I love to do, then I change it. So when I went from owning this business and then going into paid speaking, that was a big change.
Mm-hmm.
And then that change led to coaching and led to consulting, led to writing books, led to all the things that we all do. And it was constantly reinventing and learning and reinventing and tweaking. And then when my husband got sick, I thought, how can I travel like this? I mean, I love him. How can I leave him like this? And so I cut back on my speaking and I formed my own association, which I had for 5 years. And I did it with a member of NSA. And we ran that for 5 years.
And what was that association? What was the makeup?
Internet Association of Information Marketers.
Okay.
So everybody who was selling information online, not everybody, but the people who were members of our association were people selling information online. And they ran from speakers to pastors. I mean, it was every kind of person. Mm-hmm. And then I sold that back to him after 5 years and then developed the Spunky Old Broad, because now I was in a different phase of my career and I was not going to go back on the road speaking to conventions and associations. I mean, I am speaking on the road. I'm going this weekend, but I'm not doing 135 programs a year anymore. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started the Spunky Old Broad and bringing in the over 50 crowd and doing more workshops for them and writing material for them, etc.
So you've lived this. First of all, you have lived this reinvention over and over and over. And to me, that's growth, right? You're tapping into, into these different areas that you've developed these gifts, and it's extraordinary. Most people just get stuck though. So how do you get people unstuck? I mean, you and I have talked about the fact that we both have clients, no matter the age or level of success, who just are feeling like they don't know what to do next, right? They're feeling stuck.
Well, I think a lot of it is up here. It's the mindset. And I'm a firm believer in positive thinking and positive mindset. And it's very hard. I know this is not everybody, but it's very hard for me to get depressed. I mean, I might get depressed for like 30 seconds and then all of a sudden I'm back where I was because I just don't live there. That's just not where I am. And so I'm always learning. I'm always going to workshops. I'm always studying something. I'm always taking a seminar or webinar, going to conferences. And people say to me all the time, don't you know it yet? And I say, when I stop learning, I stop doing what I'm going to be doing. But I think it's the inside, the gut, the feeling that you have inside of you that says, it's not over yet. There's more for you to do. There's more influence that you can have. These are things that you need to impart to others. It means that, as we were talking earlier about leaving a legacy, doing something that inspires other people to want to be better and more accomplished at whatever it is they want to do. But with me, it's just that I love what I do and I want to get better at it all the time.
Got it. So what do you say to someone? Let's say that you come across somebody in your audience who is just not feeling that great, and they don't know which way to turn. How do you get them started? Like, what's the first step that someone takes to really figure out this idea of reinvention?
Well, first, I always want to know where the person is coming from. People get stuck in a lot of different places. I've had people that are still living the life that their parents told them about when they were 5. So I have to get that out of there because they're still being ruled by what they were taught back then. So it's a combination of that. I find out what do they really love? What gets them excited? For example, I know you also are very into animals. I just cannot live without an animal. And so I know they create messes, they cause all kinds of trauma in your house, but still I love them. And so if I knew that somebody had a passion for animals or for travel or for whatever it is they're interested in, we work through that and see, could that be something that they could enjoy and make a living at? For example, people make a fortune walking dogs. So, there are people out there busy. Our millennials are all over the place. Our boomers are busy. And some of them have animals. And if you can get a job as a dog walker, or I come in and I spend time in your home and I pet them and I play with them, people will pay big dollars for that.
Don't we know it? We pay a small fortune when we go out of town to have someone stay with our dogs.
Yeah. So there you go. But it could be that. It could be working in the health field. It could be working in a library. It could be volunteering. I have met more people, because we do a lot of work in Orlando. There's a lot of people who I meet as shuttle drivers who were doctors, who were lawyers, who were teachers, and they're having a ball because all they have to do is pick people up and deliver them to their destination. But they meet fascinating people. They tell me all the stories about the wonderful people they meet, but they don't really have real hard responsibility, and they're having a blast. So it's really finding out where someone is coming from, what they've always imagined they'd like to do. Maybe they continue in their work and they test drive this other thing they'd like to do for 30 days by maybe doing some interning, and even at whatever age they are, interning, doing some volunteer. Because people, I'm sure they say to you too also, they say to me, oh, we just want to go in your suitcase. We want to follow you around. And I say, no, you don't. I said, because you'd be exhausted. I mean, people could not keep up with my schedule because they think it's all wonderful. I remember the first time my son came with me and I got picked up in a limousine and we had this beautiful suite. And he said to me, oh, Mom, do you always travel like this? I said, no, you should be on the Greyhound bus with me when it's snowing. And it's the only way I can get from city to city. I said, you should see the horrible Ramada Inn I had to be in because it was the only hotel in the city. I mean, just stuff like that. And people always glamorize it. They don't realize the work that goes into everything that we do.
Yeah. A lot of work. And yet there sometimes is some really great glamour behind it, but it's not always the case.
So let's talk about the people who that have figured out and have innovated and you've helped. But let's talk about the people that are dissatisfied right now. There's a lot of people out there, right? And I don't know if it's just the time that we live in, this where people are seeing, what other people's lives are on with social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of that. And they're measuring themselves, but there are a lot of people that are really dissatisfied with their lives and are looking for something more. So how do you help that? And what are you finding as far as typical dissatisfaction from people?
Well, I think one of the reasons they're dissatisfied is many of the companies don't have that loyalty anymore either. Mm-hmm. So people have seen people downsized, right-sized, let go before the time they wanted to go, and they don't feel the loyalty is there anymore. So they think, why should I pour my heart out and do what I do when I'm not appreciated? Now, that doesn't go for everybody or for every company, but they're seeing a lot of it. I mean, you have to be absolutely out of touch, in other words, not to see it. So they're saying, well, okay, or some of them are forced out because of age or because of whatever, or a lack of skill in something. They've changed how they do it. Or companies have been bought, and when companies are bought, many times they bring in their own staff and the other people are let go. So there's a variety of reasons. But I think you have to really you have to find out what the trigger point is for that individual. That's the thing. Because what satisfies you, what satisfies, for instance, Paul, what satisfies you might not satisfy Heather. And what satisfies me wouldn't satisfy either one of you. So you have to find out the trigger. Like my son says to me, Mom, I would never want to work as hard as you do. And yet to me, it's not work. I mean, I love what I do, so it's not work. And I do have a huge work ethic. I know that. And for example, millennials coming up don't have it. They switch from job to job to job. And I think many of the people in their 30s are saying, you know, I worked really hard to get to this point, but where do I go from here?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's finding everybody's trigger point, and then we work from there.
So talk to us a little bit more about these trigger points and give us a few more examples, because I think you're really onto something. And I am a huge believer that the more introspective we can become, the more we learn about who we are and what we want, the more satisfied or successful we're going to feel. So triggers, are these triggers positive triggers? Are they negative triggers?
I think they're both.
Okay.
I think really, this is sad to say, but it's really the negative triggers that push you.
Yeah.
Because that makes you really unhappy where you are. So I would say, for example, if you want to make a change, you have to look at your financial situation.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a single parent? Are you someone who is responsible for elder care? Are you in a situation where maybe you could work at your regular job and try something part-time? There are lots of different things, but the most important thing, at least for women, I have not surveyed men, but when I surveyed women, and I said, what is and this was frankly people 50 plus, but I think nowadays it goes for the ones that are 35 also. What is the most important thing to you? Number one was health.
Number one was health. Good.
Health.
Good.
So I think that if someone is stressed in their job, if they're tired all the time, if they're working a lot, that's a trigger point because they can't take care of themselves.
Okay.
That was number one. Number two was financial security. Now, financial security meant different things to different people. If I was living in a mansion, it meant continuing to live in that mansion. If I was living in a studio apartment, it meant continuing to live in that studio apartment. So it meant, however I have been living, I want to know at least I can live in that manner if I choose to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
So that was number two.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing that came up was community. Now, community meant people living around me, my friends. It could have also been a family community. And it also depended on whether I was a whole unit, husband and wife, or was I a single parent? Was I someone who had a family who would pitch in and help? Or did I have no one around me? I mean, all of those things were community. And then after that, it went into a whole variety of reasons. But very recently, more than I would say certainly 20 years ago, it was not so much promotions and jobs. It was those three things. And then how do I build my life around that?
And so, okay, so you've got the top three that you've identified. And if we have this real need, this desire to be happy in those three areas, to whether it's just keep the consistency, like live in the manner that I'm accustomed to, be as healthy as I need to be, have the community that I want to have. When you have some level of dissatisfaction in one of those areas, that's one of the things that's the trigger, as you call it, that would drive someone to want to make the change, right?
Yes.
Yes. And then you might also have a positive trigger, which is more about the vision for what it could be like. Let's say that I'm one of those people living in a studio apartment. I really want to get a home for myself. That vision might be a driver, which is a trigger to say, I need to make a change so that I can be in this spot. Is that right?
Yes, and that might mean moving, because buying a home in New York City,
right,
and buying a home in, let's say, Miami or San Diego, where I am, or buying one in Northern California, where all the high-tech places are, is different than buying a home in Syracuse or Kansas City or Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So I have to say, okay, am I prepared to give up where I prefer to live to have the home I want? And those are things you have to look at. And people do look at that. I mean, it happened in my own family. My granddaughter and her husband moved to California because he got a very good position. But by the time they got done paying rent and taxes and insurance, there was hardly anything left to live on. So they moved back to where they bought a home that was 3 bedrooms, brick, huge yard, pool, for $120,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes a difference, and
Yeah.
there are compromises that have to be made. On the other hand, it depends on what you want your lifestyle to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love this idea of really assessing those triggers and figuring out where you have either the dissatisfaction or maybe the vision for what you want to change in your world. And how many people just stay where they are in this place of being stuck, and they keep going into, day after day feeling the same way, but don't do anything about it. I think sometimes people really need that person like you who can inspire them, engage them, be inquisitive with them to figure out what it is they want.
But that's the majority. Unfortunately, it's the majority. The majority of people are not willing to put their toe in the water. They're not willing to take that extra step.
Mm-hmm.
And, for one reason or another, we need people like that in certain companies to do the same job every day, over and over, which would drive all of us crazy. But that's what they need, and those people like it because they know what to expect. They know what to come in and do. They know what they're going home to, and they're perfectly happy. And that's okay. If that's for them, that's okay. But if they are willing to step out of their comfort zone, then there are challenges, and they've got to be ready to meet them.
Yeah. So, Gayle, will you talk to us a little bit about your Spunky Old Broad network? I mean, you've got a radio show. You've actually got multiple radio shows, don't you?
Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, I'm starting a new one in 2 weeks. I do 12 radio shows a month now, and they're in 3 different genres. And then I am starting a new one called The Power of the Heels, which is really about women who want to get to the top, and some of the things to deal with sexual harassment now that are going on, and all of those things. So and I'm going to have a co-host on that. So that's going to be a new show. And then, of course, I continue to do TV and so forth. And that's what I also do. Now what I do is I train people how to get on television, how to get on the radio, put their segment proposals together for them, train them for what they need to do. And that's another thing that I'm doing now, which I just adore.
Oh my gosh.
You are such a power woman.
Isn't she a power woman?
Inspiration.
So what I love about Gayle is she sees an opening in the marketplace. There's a need here. Well, why don't I just do another radio show? Why don't I start this arm of my business? I mean, you just are amazing how entrepreneurial you are, and you just make it look so easy.
It's not easy. It's not easy, but I will say, I mean, it's because I love it. It goes back to I love it. And, it's kind of like what I've always been. I was telling somebody this morning, when I was 3 years old, I said I was going to have a career. And I said I was never getting married, which I, didn't get married for a long time. And I just was very fortunate who I married because he was great in terms of my career and so forth. But, I just have always, this has been my life. I've not had a lot of other things. I mean, I'm interested in a whole bunch of things, but this has been my whole life. And my son often says to me, Mom, nobody works as hard as you do. And I don't want to work as hard as you do. As a matter of fact, I know, Heather, you were an attorney. I spent a lot of money sending my son to law school. And he said, but I never want to be an attorney because I'm not prepared to work 80 hours a week. And so what it did for him, though, it taught him how to think, and it taught him how to analyze, and it taught him how to structure deals. Yeah. So that's what it did. But he didn't want to work that hard. He saw how hard my husband worked, how hard I worked. We both worked very hard to have what we had. And, he said, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that amount of clarity probably rubbed off on him because of how clear his mother is, right?
I don't know. You'll get a kick out of this. He was doing a moot court, and he was scared to death. So I bought him a power suit, and I taught him the power stance, and he got an A. But he said, if they ever looked down, there was a pool of water. I was so nervous. So, but I think he admires what I do, but he wants no part of it.
Well, I'm sure there are many people who would love to learn about the power stance, who would love to learn about how to present themselves, how to get how to get on TV. I mean, the fact that you offer that as a service is just tremendous. How to get on radio. What's one tip that you could give to our listeners about how you can begin to present yourself and put yourself out there like that?
The most important thing is that you're relevant to the audience they have.
Okay.
For example, I put in proposals to, let's say, 13 different stations, and 11 of them I got on. 2 of them I did not. Why? One was a younger audience. It wasn't for my market. So that's number one. Number 2, one had a boss that she thought she ever told them I was a SOB, a spunky old broad, he just wouldn't know what to do with that. But the other 11 loved it, and they wanted me because of that, but she was scared to even tell her boss about it. So be relevant to the audience that you're going after, and what makes you different, what makes you unique. Everybody thinks they have this message, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not really different than what anybody else has. So you really have to get very definitive about what you're offering.
And, God, it's such great advice as an individual trying to put forward a brand, but even in the bigger picture in business, how many people really still struggle with communicating their uniqueness. It's a major, major opportunity, isn't it?
Oh, well, years and years and years ago, I was a part of the advertising club and the direct marketing association. And I was a judge in one of the contests where they had the printed material. And if I had one credit card campaign come across in front of me to judge, I had 20. They all looked the same. I could have put just one different name in front of the other. It would have looked exactly the same. Yet I'm sure every one of those credit card companies and banks associated with it thought they were different and unique. And there was nothing different about them. And we have to figure that out. What are we saying? How are we saying it in a way that's different from anybody else?
Oh my gosh, it's so good. That's so good. The amount of denial that we as a society have business-wise around thinking that we're unique. I've actually encouraged people before to call 10 of their competitors. Like, I'll say, what's your uniqueness? And they'll tell me. And I'll say, now call 10 of your competitors and ask them the same question. Ask them what makes them unique and why they should buy there instead of somewhere else. And I said, just give me the feedback. Because what most people think is their uniqueness in business. So we're just talking entrepreneurs right now.
Ask me.
Paul, what is it that makes you unique?
We take care of our customers.
Okay, but most companies take care of their customers.
No, we really take care of them.
Okay. Like treat them like family, right?
Right.
And
Well,
so
that's so funny, Paul, because let's say I was big in customer service. In fact, I was the keynote speaker at the Australian Customer Service Summit, and they named the summit after my program. And you will see that when you talk to companies, they will say, well, we provide excellent customer service.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, what do you want to provide? Terrible customer service?
Right.
Although many still do. But it's true, exactly what you said. And it's very hard to differentiate yourself. Best way is to ask the customer, how are we unique? Or ask your friends, what makes me unique? And they will tell you, because what you think of as just what I do, they think as unique because they can't do it. So that's a good way to find out.
Yeah, that's great advice. So for those of you listening, if you are questioning at all whether you have truly defined something that is unique, I mean, it's one of the criteria for being unique is that nobody else is saying it. So you have to make sure that whatever it is you're saying is not being said by all sorts of other people in your industry.
Nobody else is an SOB.
That's right. That's right.
At least a spunky old broad. They may be an SOB. Spunky old broad.
Not a spunky old broad, that's for sure. All right, well, Gayle, before we could talk to you for hours, because I know you have so many more things that you've done in your past in your career that people would love to hear about. Before we wrap up with you here today, I'd love to know, is there anything that you are currently reading, watching, or listening to that you would recommend to others?
Well, what I like, I would not recommend anybody else looking at. I happen to love TV. I know most people say, oh, it's a waste of time. It relaxes me. Okay. And so I love shows like NCIS and that kind of genre swap, those kinds of things.
Got it.
So I like that. And when I go to the movies, I want to see a chick flick. I don't want to think. I don't want to be serious. I get enough of that all day long. I just want to be entertained. But I do love Dancing with the Stars because I started out my career as a dancer and a singer. So I'm up there with them while they're doing that. However, most of the books I read are marketing books.
Okay.
They're business books, but they're marketing books. And it's interesting how each person has just a little different approach to what they're doing and how they're doing it. Mm-hmm. And this is another thing. I happen to be fortunate enough to interview the authors that are at the Miami International Book Fair. Mm-hmm. And I'm amazed. Now, here's a great example. I'm amazed how many book authors are not prepared to do an interview on radio or TV.
Really?
They're not. They're so wrapped up in their writing and how they get it down on paper and whether the characters come alive and whether they're getting their message across. They don't think about how to position it when they're on air, and they have maybe 3 minutes if it's television, mm-hmm. and maybe 30 minutes if it's radio, on how to get their message across. And so I find that most of the books I read, though, are business books and marketing books.
Got it. Anything else from you, Paul?
No, thank you so much, Gayle. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show today. And we want to make sure that people can reach out to you if they want to learn more about the SOB, Spunky Old Broad. How do they find you, Gayle?
Well, my website is spunkyoldbroad.com.
Okay,
and
that's
they
easy.
Go there and sign up. I have a newsletter I send out every Monday, so they can subscribe to that, so they'll keep in touch with what I'm doing,
okay,
and what I have to offer. And if they want to email me, they can do it at Gayle Carson, which of course is Gayle Carson13@gmail.com.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. And if someone wants to tune into your radio show, do they find that on your website or do they go somewhere else?
I have it on my website. The shows are on the website. They're also, the featured shows of the week are in the newsletter. And then, of course, the Spunky Old Broad shows are on SOBRadioNetwork.com. That's for the over 50 woman. Okay. And the other shows are on Radio Ear Network, which is RadioEarNetwork.com. And that's my Living Regret Free, How to Live a Better Life and an Interesting Happy Life. And the other is Women in Business.
Awesome. Now, just give us an idea of your listenership. Do you have some fans out there?
Well, according to the producers of the show, I have 500,000 listeners total in the various combination of the shows.
Yeah. So 500,000 listeners. Like, here's the thing. People hear you and you're so down to earth and you're so friendly and you're so kind and nice and just wonderful to talk to. And then they learn that you've built this business empire, and then you've switched, and then you've become this professional speaker. And oh, by the way, you've got a radio show with 500,000 listeners. Like, oh, how do you do it? You're my idol.
You just live as long as I have. That's the key.
That's another one. Well, as you heard Dr. Carson say, it's about discipline, it's about persistence, and overall it's about mindset. And as you can tell, she has a pretty incredible mindset that she works from. She really is just such a pleasure to get to know. And I just thank you so much for taking your time today and sharing some of your nuggets of wisdom with all of us.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I really do. Thank you so much.
And thanks for tuning in to the Evolve to Win show in partnership with Gulf Shore Business. And if you liked this show, please share it. Please feel free to reach out to Dr. Carson and get in touch and become one of her 500,000 plus subscribers to be able to listen to her show.
Thank you, Gayle.
Have a great day, Gayle.
Thanks.